Hey there, I'm Emma. I'm 28 and doing great as an architect in New York City. I've worked super hard to get here, late nights in college, climbing the career ladder. Meanwhile, my sister Olivia has been living her best life, going on fancy vacations, all paid for by our parents. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my family. My parents, Robert and Diana, have always supported us. But lately, I feel like they're a bit disappointed that I'm not more like Olivia. Emma, dear, when are you going to take a break? Mom's always saying. You work too hard. Look at Olivia, she knows how to enjoy life. Yeah, because Olivia's never had to work a day in her life. Everything changed when Grandpa passed away. He was my biggest cheerleader, always telling me I had a gift for architecture and not to let anyone dim my light. When we got the call about the will reading, I was devastated. Losing him was tough, but I had to stay strong. This wasn't just about money, it was about his legacy. The night before the will reading, I'm at my parents' house for dinner. Olivia, of course, is there too. So, sis, she says, sipping her wine, any plans for your share of the inheritance? I almost choke on my food. Olivia, we don't even know what's in the will yet. Dad tries to calm things down. Now, girls, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Grandpa's legacy is about more than just money, but I can see it in Olivia's eyes, she's already spending it in her mind. Later, while helping Mom with the dishes, she drops a bombshell. Emma, your father and I have been thinking, maybe it's time you settle down and start a family. Focusing so much on work isn't healthy, I can feel my blood pressure rising. Mom, I'm happy with my life. My career is important to me, she sighs, giving me that familiar disappointed look. I just worry about you, dear. You're not getting any younger. As I leave that night, I can't shake this uneasy feeling, like something big is coming, but I can't figure out what. The next morning, we're all at the lawyer's office for the will reading. Olivia's practically bouncing in her seat while I try to stay calm. This is it, the moment that could change everything. I noticed my parents exchange a look, something felt off, deep in my gut. I had no idea that everything I thought I knew about my family was about to be shattered. The bombshell that was about to drop would change my life completely. The lawyer's office was silent as Mr. Thompson, our family attorney, cleared his throat. My palms were sweaty, and I could feel Olivia fidgeting next to me. Let's begin the reading of Mr. Jonathan Miller's last will and testament, Mr. Thompson started. I held my breath, thinking about Grandpa, his kind smile, his encouragement. But then, Mr. Thompson's voice pulled me back to the moment. To my granddaughter, Emma Miller, I leave. Suddenly, Dad interrupted. Actually, there's been a change. I looked up, confused. What change? Mom chimed in, her voice sweet but fake. We've decided to make a small adjustment to your grandfather's wishes. Mr. Thompson looked puzzled. I'm not aware of any changes, Mr. and Mrs. Miller. Dad waved it off. It's a family decision. We're redistributing Emma's inheritance to Olivia. The room erupted. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? You can't do that. I shouted, jumping to my feet. Olivia's smug voice cut in. Oh, come on, sis. You don't really need it, do you? I mean, you've got your fancy job and all. I turned to her, furious. This isn't about need, Olivia. This is about Grandpa's wishes. Mom tried to calm me down. Sweetie, we just think Olivia could use the help more. You're doing so well on your own, so I'm being punished for working hard? For making something of myself? I could feel tears stinging my eyes. Dad's voice grew stern. Now, Emma, don't be dramatic. We're just trying to be fair. Fair? How is this fair? I was screaming now, hurt and angry. Mr. Thompson stepped in, saying, I must advise that this is highly irregular and potentially illegal. But my parents weren't listening. They were too busy fussing over Olivia, who was already thinking about how to spend the money. I'm thinking of a trip to Bali, she mused. Or maybe I'll buy that cute little sports car. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my bag and stormed out, ignoring my parents' calls. Outside, everything felt like it was spinning. How could this be happening? I slumped against the building, trying to catch my breath. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Don't be childish, Emma. Come back inside so we can discuss this as a family," I scoffed. Family? What family? As I hailed a cab, another text came through, this time from Olivia. "Thanks for the cash, sis. Don't worry, I'll send you a postcard from my yacht." I turned off my phone, unable to handle their cruelty. Back at my apartment, I paced, my mind racing. This couldn't be legal, changing a will like that? I tried to make sense of it all. The favoritism, the constant criticism of my choices, the way Olivia was always praised for doing nothing. It had always been there, hadn't it? I just didn't want to see it. As night fell, I sat in the dark, feeling more alone than ever. My whole life, I'd worked to make my family proud, and now I was being cast aside. The betrayal hurt deeply, but as I sat there, something else began to rise inside me, determination. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. They thought they could take what was rightfully mine, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. As I drifted off to a restless sleep, one thought echoed in my mind: this means war. The next morning, I woke up with a mission. No more tears, no more feeling sorry for myself. It was time to get to the bottom of this. I called my friend Jake, a sharp lawyer I knew from college. "Jake, I need your help. It's about my grandfather's will." We met at a coffee shop, where I told him everything. Jake's eyes widened. "Emma, what they did isn't just unethical, it could be illegal. Wills can't just be changed like that. So, what can I do?" He leaned in, lowering his voice. "We need to investigate, get the original will, any changes, and find out if there was undue influence." I nodded, feeling determined. "Where do I start?" "Your grandfather's lawyer, Mr. Thompson. He might help if he thinks something's wrong." I left the coffee shop with a plan. First stop, Mr. Thompson's office. The old lawyer looked relieved when he saw me. "Emma, I'm glad you're here. What happened at the reading didn't sit right with me. Can you tell me more about the original will?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "Your grandfather left you the majority of his estate. He was so proud of your hard work, Emma. He wanted to make sure you could pursue your dreams without worrying about money." My heart clenched. "Oh, Grandpa. When was the will changed?" Mr. Thompson frowned. "That's the thing. It wasn't officially changed. Your parents just announced it. I've never seen anything like it." With this information, I dug deeper. I called old family friends and business associates of my grandfather. Slowly, a picture started to form. Olivia had been manipulating my parents for years, playing the victim and making me look like the cold, career-driven daughter who didn't need their support. But it was worse than that. I uncovered evidence that my parents had been embezzling money from the family company to fund Olivia's lavish lifestyle. Each new discovery was like a knife to the heart. How could they do this to me? How could they disrespect Grandpa's memory like this? I struggled with what to do next. These were my parents, my sister. Did I really want to take legal action against them? But then I remembered Grandpa's words: stand up for what's right, Emma, no matter what. I made my decision. I called Jake. "I want to pursue this legally. I have evidence." Jake's voice was serious. "It won't be easy, Emma. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. They need to face the consequences for what they've done." Over the next few weeks, Jake and I built our case: financial records, witness statements, copies of the original will. It was all there in black and white, but I needed more. I needed undeniable proof of their lies. That's when I came up with a plan: a family dinner, one last chance for them to come clean, and I'd record it for evidence. As I sent out the invitations, my stomach churned. This was it, the point of no return. I looked at a photo of Grandpa on my desk, his kind eyes seeming to encourage me. "I won't let you down, Grandpa," I whispered to myself. "I'll make this right." The stage was set. In just a few days, I would confront my family with the truth, and after that, nothing would ever be the same. The day of the family dinner arrived. I had set up hidden cameras in the dining room, with Jake waiting in the next room. My heart was pounding as I heard the doorbell ring. "Emma, darling," Mom breezed in, giving me air kisses on the cheek. Dad and Olivia followed, all smiles, acting like everything was fine. We sat down to eat, making small talk. I could barely touch my food, waiting for the right moment. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "So, about Grandpa's will." The room went silent. Dad cleared his throat. "Emma, we've been over this. It's done. I took a deep breath. No, it's not. I know what you did. All of it. Olivia scoffed. What are you talking about? I pulled out a folder. I'm talking about how you manipulated Mom and Dad for years and how you've been embezzling from the family company. Mom's face went pale. That's ridiculous. Emma, you're being paranoid. Am I? I laid out the financial records in front of him. Explain these. Then, hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled into Olivia's accounts. Dad stood up, his face turning red. Now listen here, young lady, but I kept going. And let's talk about the will. You had no legal right to change it. Grandpa wanted me to have that inheritance. Olivia's smug smile faded. You were always his favorite. It's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I worked hard while you partied through life, and they supported you every step of the way. Mom tried to calm things down. Sweetie, we just wanted to help Olivia. You're so successful. You thought you'd punish me for being independent, for making something of myself. That's when Jake walked in. Mr. and Mrs. Miller. Olivia, I'm Jake, Emma's lawyer. We have enough evidence here for criminal charges. The room exploded into chaos. Dad was yelling, Mom was crying, and Olivia was trying to delete something on her phone. You can't do this, Dad shouted. We're family. I stood my ground. You stopped being my family the moment you betrayed me, and Grandpa. In the weeks that followed, everything unraveled. The evidence was undeniable. My parents faced charges for financial fraud and tampering with the will. Olivia was caught up in the embezzlement scheme. The legal battle was tough, but in the end, justice was served. The court reinstated Grandpa's original will, and I got back my rightful inheritance. My family's reputation was ruined, their social standing destroyed. As for me, I cut all ties. It was hard, but necessary. The last time I saw them was in court. As the verdict was read, the look of betrayal in their eyes almost made me laugh. They still didn't understand, did they? With the nightmare behind me, I focused on honoring Grandpa's memory. I used part of the inheritance to start a scholarship fund for aspiring architects from underprivileged backgrounds. The rest, I invested wisely, just as Grandpa would have wanted. 1 year after that fateful reading, I stood in front of my latest project, a community center named after Grandpa. As I cut the ribbon, a sense of peace washed over me. I could almost hear Grandpa say, "You did good, kiddo." I had lost the family I was born into, but I had gained something far more valuable: self-respect, integrity, and the knowledge that I could stand on my own. As I walked into my new office, I looked at the photo of Grandpa on my desk. "We did it," I whispered. "We made things right." The betrayal had nearly broken me, but in the end, it made me stronger. I was Emma Miller, architect, philanthropist, survivor, and I was just getting started. And that's the end of Emma's journey. Now, here's a question for you. Do you think Emma was right to take legal action against her family, or should she have tried to resolve the inheritance issue privately? At what point should family loyalty be set aside in favor of justice and personal integrity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective could spark some interesting discussions. If this story of betrayal and redemption resonated with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more complex family stories and ethical dilemmas. Your support helps bring these thought-provoking stories to life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
My name is Nancy, and there's a world out there, unknown to me until childhood, when I first glimpsed it on TV. Wild animals roamed landscapes I'd never seen, and people spoke languages foreign to mine. The desire to explore this unknown world up close ignited within me, so boldly, I pursued studies abroad during college. My destination, the very unknown world I yearned to discover. Despite the language barrier, the people thrived, and the land teemed with creatures amidst breathtaking landscapes. Eager for others to share in this wonder, I secured a job at a travel agency. Responsible for tour planning, I drew upon my study abroad experiences, managing everything from site inspections to negotiations. Balancing work and personal life, I married Daniel, whom I met through work. Yet, a problem surfaced with my mother-in-law, Barbara. Firm in her belief that women should remain homemakers post-marriage, Barbara clashed with my modern views. Though I respected her perspective, I couldn't let her dictate my life. To evade living under her roof, I proposed buying a house to Daniel, believing it would alter perceptions. Daniel readily agreed, and we acquired a home. However, Barbara's visits became frequent, disrupting our weekends with noise and unwelcome opinions. Despite the tension, Barbara nonchalantly announced an upcoming trip, assuming I'd join. When I hesitated due to work commitments, she accused me of neglecting family. Feeling cornered, I acquiesced, though begrudgingly. As tension simmered, Barbara, with a sly tone, reminded me of my profession, insisting I handle the trip arrangements. Reluctantly, I obliged, concealing my irritation. The destination? London, where my study abroad journey had unfolded. I still have many connections there. It might be challenging for other regions, but perhaps I can manage London. All right, I'll give it a try. I've already got the plane tickets, so just book the hotel. You've booked the flight, but not the hotel. I managed to get the tickets by redeeming my card miles for first-class seats. Barbara grinned with evident delight. Daniel, leaning in, remarked, "First class? Seriously, Mom?" "Yes, it's a first-class trip abroad," Barbara confirmed, her grin widening. "We'll depart at 9:30 p.m., so you can work until the last minute," she added cheerfully. Although her enthusiasm seemed genuine, I couldn't ignore the mountain of branded goods piled on the sofa. "I see," I said, catching on to the implication of her joy. Realizing the need to secure accommodations quickly, I decided to leverage my old contacts from my study abroad days to secure a hotel referral. Making a call, I arranged for accommodations for 4 people in 2 rooms. On the day of the trip, the short notice left me unable to take the day off work. Barbara instructed me to meet at the airport by 6:00 p.m. If I wrap up work soon, I can make it, I reassured myself. Suddenly, Barbara called. "Hello, Barbara," I answered. "Nancy, are you done with work?" she inquired. "I'm just leaving the office now, so I'll be at the airport after 6:00 p.m. "Oh, that's too bad," Barbara responded. "Well, we're actually leaving at 6:00 p.m. No way," I exclaimed, rushing back to my desk to check the flight schedule. London. I found the 9:30 p.m. flight I initially heard about, but there was also a flight leaving after 6:00 p.m. Could it be this flight after 6:00 p.m.? Yes. So the family is going without you. I felt furious. How could she plan so thoroughly to leave me out? Unforgivable. But showing my frustration would play into Barbara's hands. I had to hide my feelings, even if it meant putting on a brave face. Clenching my teeth, I said to Barbara, "I'm the one who booked the hotel, so Daniel knows the hotel name. You can't do anything now." I could hear Barbara laughing on the other end. Annoyed, I said, "Go without me then." "That's better." "We don't need a useless wife like you," she retorted. "Useless? What do you mean? Don't you know what you neglect? Housework for your job." "Daniel is complaining," she continued. "True, I'm busy with work, but I've never slacked off on housework." "Why would Daniel complain? Can I speak to Daniel?" I asked. Barbara's mocking voice was followed by Daniel's greeting. "Hello, what's up, Nancy?" "What do you mean you're complaining about me?" I asked him. "Just that you're always at work and neglecting me," he responded. "Neglect? I prepare meals, clean, and do laundry. But you think you're doing it all yourself, right?" "That's not true," I retorted. "Shouldn't you respect me more? Listen to me? Do things for me?" I questioned. "I know a wife who supports her husband is valued. It's convenient for the husband, but that's not all there is to a marriage," I continued. I never badmouthed Daniel in public, always praising him, but not when it's just the two of us. But we need to speak our minds when alone. Otherwise, our relationship would fall apart, and I'd become nothing but a servant to Daniel. Yet he kept complaining about me, I explained. "So, you think you can act all high and mighty because you earn more?" I challenged him. "Not at all," he replied. "That annoys me, and you're leaving me behind for that?" I asked incredulously. "Yeah, consider it stress relief. I'll bring you a souvenir, so don't worry," he assured me. "That's not the point," I insisted. Clearly, Daniel was taking me for granted. If that's how it is, I have my own plans. "Fine, enjoy the trip." "Will do. Bye," I concluded, hanging up. Daniel sounded happy as he hung up. I was livid. I couldn't stand the self-centered Daniel and Barbara. Enjoy your trip without me, but be prepared. Even if you come back crying and apologizing, I won't forgive you. I rushed out of the office with my mobile phone, calling someone. Hey. Hello, it's Nancy. Are you free? I need to talk about that hotel booking. With the trip canceled, I had plenty of time. I'll settle everything now. I ran around with that determination. Then, the next evening, exhausted. I got home, and right then, the phone rang. Hello, Nancy, said Barbara, sounding quite angry. I knew the reason, but pretended not to. Barbara, are you enjoying the trip? I asked. This is no time for that. We can't check into the hotel. Did you have a reservation? You made the reservation, didn't you? Barbara's tone grew more agitated. I canceled it because I wasn't going, I replied. Huh. What then? Where are we supposed to stay tonight? Barbara's frustration was palpable. I don't know, I admitted. Barbara's angry voice came through, but she's in London. Her anger over the phone isn't scary at all. That's tough, being abroad without a hotel. You never know what might happen, I remarked. Wait, help me? Barbara sounded panicked. Then, a faint voice in the background. There's a canceled room. Anthony's negotiating for us to stay there, Daniel's voice reassured. Is that true, Daniel? Barbara demanded. Looks like it'll be fine. You see, Nancy, the room was available because I canceled it, Daniel explained. But this was all part of my plan. My real aim was something else. Glad there was a vacancy. Thought you'd be smug about canceling our hotel, didn't you? I retorted. No, not really. Barbara laughed loudly. Frustrated, aren't you? You can admit it if you're upset. I just canceled it because I wasn't going. Putting on a brave face. How pathetic. Typical of Daniel's useless wife, Barbara continued. Tired of listening to her bragging, I quietly hung up the phone. She probably didn't even notice. I smiled a little at that thought. Anyway, just a few more days to endure. I braced myself and had dinner. A few days later, on my way back from a certain place, Barbara called again. Hello, what's up, Nancy? What's going on again? She asked. Not again. What's wrong with this hotel? I inquired. In short, they stayed in the room I canceled, thanks to Anthony's negotiation. They were supposed to stay for 4 days and check out today, but there was a problem. They were billed £8,000 by the hotel. What's the issue? I asked. It's £2,000 per night, right? That's about $2,500 per night in dollars. Ridiculous. It's for 2 rooms, right? So, about $1,200 per room. You told Daniel it was $300 per room per night. Yes, I did. So it should be $600 for 2 rooms. Why is it 4 times? I was astonished that they stayed without even checking the room rates. Well, I anticipated this, so I set it up accordingly. Anyway, Barbara making a fuss on the phone must be bothering others. I should calm her down. Hey, Nancy, can you hear me? Barbara's voice echoed through the phone. Barbara, can you be a bit quieter? I interjected. Why did you lie? She accused, without reflecting on herself. Exasperated, I began to explain to Barbara. The $300 rate was because I made the reservation. Huh, so because it was last minute? She questioned. I asked a friend who runs a hotel, I replied. A friend of yours? She inquired. Their hotel offers rooms for around $600 for 2 people, I explained. Then why $11,200? Barbara sounded flustered. That's the rate for a really nice room. My friend did me a favor, I clarified. A favor. Barbara sounded taken aback. When I heard from Barbara, there was no time left for the trip, so I told my friend any available room would do. The only vacancy was an expensive suite. My friend kindly gave a discount. I continued. Barbara left me behind without asking. I immediately told my friend the situation and got the room canceled. But I couldn't just leave Barbara and the others without a hotel, so I asked to accommodate them at the regular price if they came. I knew Barbara, having heard about the hotel from Daniel. Wouldn't check the price. And I was right. Come on, you should have said that. Yelling won't help. Please make sure to pay, I urged. We're not paying, Nancy. You pay, Barbara retorted. But if you don't pay, you'll be arrested, I warned. Arrested. Of course, troubles abroad can be messy. Are you okay with that? Barbara seemed at a loss for words. As I was about to hang up, thinking I had won, Barbara shouted, "Don't mess with me. You'll regret this when I get back." That's fine, but we're strangers now, right? I responded. Huh. Why? Barbara sounded confused. Well, you said it was a family trip. So since I'm not there, I'm not family, right? I reasoned. Before she could finish, Anthony's voice came from the phone. What's all this yelling about? Be quiet. It's embarrassing. Seizing the opportunity, I called out to him, Anthony, are you okay? How's your cold? I never had a cold in the first place. What's going on? Anthony's voice was filled with concern. It seemed Anthony took the phone from Barbara. His voice grew louder. Nancy, can you explain everything? I can, actually. I told him everything from the beginning. I see. So that's why you didn't come. I'm sorry. I wanted to go. Anthony's voice softened. No, Nancy, you're not at fault. It's Barbara and Daniel. Anthony affirmed. From afar, I heard a whimper. Barbara and Daniel seemed frightened by Anthony's anger. Realizing this, an idea came to me. Should I tell Anthony what Barbara has been doing? I thought so. Anthony, can I tell you something? I asked hesitantly. What is it? Anthony replied. Barbara comes to our house almost every weekend, and when she throws away receipts at our place, there are piles of them, I explained. What receipts? For branded goods? Anthony sounded surprised. It's fine to buy a lot, but please dispose of the receipts at your place. Barbara wasn't just being noisy at our house. She was secretly buying branded goods and disposing of the receipts at our place to hide it from Anthony, thinking she wouldn't get caught this way. Of course, I concluded. I'm a witness, so it's pointless. But it seemed Anthony didn't know. That's interesting to hear. Also, please tell her to stop bad-mouthing you at our place. She talks about me too. Yes, she says you don't earn much. Daniel, too, calls him a useless dad, I think. Anything else? Anthony prompted. So I spilled all my pent-up frustrations to Anthony. Of course, some of it wasn't directly related to Anthony, but he listened silently. At the end, he apologized to me. I'm sorry. Now I understand. Understand what? Why Barbara didn't want to use her card to pay for the hotel. Maybe probably because the cost was much higher than she expected, close to her credit limit. I'm sorry, whoever's voice interjected. That was unforgivable. All your wasteful spending, Barbara. I want a divorce. Please don't do that. Anthony's shouting was followed by Barbara's pitiful voice. He also yelled at Daniel. Daniel, why don't you defend your wife? That's, don't come to my house anymore. Reflect on this alone, Anthony said firmly. Yes, sir. Daniel sounded unusually obedient. Probably, he thought being banished from his parents' house wasn't a big deal. That's when I struck the final blow. So, Daniel, looks like you're going to live alone now, huh? What do you mean? Suddenly, Daniel's voice got louder. He must have grabbed the phone. I moved my phone a bit away and told him the situation. Daniel, I want a divorce. A divorce? You're joking, right? No, I'm serious. I've already sold the house. You sold it? Why would you do that without telling me? That's our house. No, it's my house. But I was paying the mortgage too. No, you weren't. What do you mean? I was giving you part of my salary every month. That was for living expenses. A few hundred isn't enough for the mortgage. Daniel had been giving me a few hundred monthly. It helped with living expenses, but not enough for the mortgage. So I paid it alone. The house was in my name, so there was no room for complaint. This incident made me decide to divorce Daniel. I sold the house full of unpleasant memories of living with him. So, you'll be living alone now. Wait, think it over. No, it's decided. I'll contact you once I find a place. Then I'll send you the official notice. Official notice? Of course, I'll be claiming compensation in the divorce. Wait for me. Daniel was crying on the other end, but I didn't care. I hung up the phone. After that, Daniel and I divorced following discussions. Anthony actually divorced Barbara too. Barbara, due to her wasteful spending, didn't get any compensation in the divorce and was left on her own. I was just thrown out of the room. Daniel was nearly broke, apparently having spent everything except the few hundred he gave me each month on frivolous things. Now he's living in a rundown apartment and commuting to work. But things might be better for Daniel than Barbara. With no house or money and Daniel's place too small, Barbara had to take a live-in job. She's working hard from morning till night now. As for me, I'm doing great being single. I have more free time and can handle overseas negotiations. I've become a relied-upon figure at work, even hearing talks of a promotion to department head today. I'm busy flying around the world, planning new tour packages. Even if you attempt to trouble us, there's hardly any loss on your part, considering it's your funds, useless to poor people with lowly lineage. I sighed as I completed the final check. You're closing your account, right? Please, go ahead, I said with a tone that seemed mocking. Their eyes, filled with clear disdain, made me feel disgusted as they stared at us. I decided it was time to give those who judge others by their upbringing a taste of their own medicine. With that thought, I smiled. My name is Tiffany, a 29-year-old office worker. Currently, I'm living a peaceful life with my mom while working. My dad passed away from an illness when I was young. His chronic illness had worsened early. My father, who was involved in various businesses, was always busy with work, out early and back late. Even so, he treasured his family time, and I have fond memories of playing with him on his days off. Mom and I were initially shocked by Dad's death, but Mom, not wanting me to feel lonely, cherished our time together. Fortunately, when Dad fell ill, he made sure with the former CEO to secure enough funds for our livelihood. Thanks to that, I was able to go to college, and both Dad's and Mom's parents were very supportive, especially my paternal grandparents, who lived nearby, took great care of me when Mom was away at work. We still go back to both sets of grandparents for holidays like Christmas and spend time together. I am who I am today thanks to the support of many people. To give back, I went to a national university and got a job at a major company. I thought about working at the bank my dad was supposed to inherit, but I chose a career I loved. As you're being told, do what you love. I've already handed the bank over, don't worry about it. Thanks to a fulfilling home environment and the freedom to dive into hobbies, I had no interest in romance. But now, at a mature age, many of my friends are married with kids. This led me to think about marriage, and that's when a certain encounter happened. I never imagined this meeting would lead to a major incident. Hey, Tiffany, aren't you interested in love, huh? That was the starting point, a question from a colleague at work. We've been close since our rookie days. You know, I have an acquaintance who's struggling to find a match. He's well-educated and handsome. You're highly educated too, Tiffany. Maybe you'd like to meet him. I've always thought it's a waste for someone as eloquent as you, Tiffany. There are even a few people in the office who are after you. She has a wide network and always shares various stories. She's living with her boyfriend, whom she met at a party, and seems very happy. She's quite concerned about my lack of romantic involvement. I had even consulted her about marriage, leading to this arrangement. A few days later, I agreed to meet a man named Yves. The rendezvous was at a cafe, and as I waited nervously, a man approached me. Tiffany? Ah, yes, nice to meet you. You're Yves, right? I said, feeling a bit anxious. Yes, thank you for today. Yosef's expression was blank as he looked me over. It felt like he was sizing me up, and I was a bit taken aback. Then, taking a seat opposite me, he quickly started the conversation. What do you do for work, Tiffany? He inquired. I work in sales at a company. I've always enjoyed interacting with people and making use of my opinions, which is why I chose sales. I find it fulfilling, and I love the moments when customers are happy with their purchases. I replied, trying to ease the tension. "What's the name of your company?" he asked. I told him the name of my company. Upon hearing it, Is paused for a moment, then smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile, more like one of satisfaction. "My company is quite a large enterprise with good performance. We're well trusted by our customers," he said, his tone slightly arrogant. Since he asked, I decided to return the question. "What do you do, Yes?" At my question, Is snorted with pride and began to boast. "I work at Sunrise Bank as a department head." Sunrise Bank is a really big bank, you know. The work is tough, not something ordinary people can handle. But since my dad is the CEO and I'm the successor, it's different for me. I felt a stir in my chest at Yosef's words. I was expecting a normal response, but Yosef's aggressively toned words made me feel uncomfortable. Indeed, Sunrise Bank is a major bank. I knew about Sunrise Bank due to a certain incident, but I was surprised to learn that East worked there as a department head. Wow, that's impressive. Sunrise Bank is a big place, isn't it? I flattered Yis on purpose. I saw no need to be rude, and though I thought this would probably be our last meeting, I figured it was better to be nice. Pleased with my flattery, Yis continued to boast about himself. Honestly, talking to him was painful. He did listen to me occasionally, but always turned the conversation back to himself, even making outrageous comments about his lack of romantic prospects. I'm quite popular, you know, but it's always people who don't match my family background or education level that come to me. I thought the problem might be his attitude, but I had already decided not to meet him again after informing my friend. As time passed, he still looked satisfied and made a suggestion. "I'd really like to meet your parents, huh? But we just met today. That's exactly why parents' excellence is important, especially if we're going to date, right?" Inside, I screamed. I had no intention of dating him, but he seemed oblivious to my discomfort and kept pushing forward. "When are your parents in? Are you available?" I'll have to discuss it with my mom." What about your dad?" As Yeast pressed on, I felt a growing sense of disgust, but couldn't find the strength to cut him off. My dad passed away when I was young." At my words, Yis narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, waiting for him to speak, Yis just said, "I see," and fell silent, pondering. "Well, send me a date that works for you later. I'll adjust my schedule." No, thank you. Should we leave then?" Before I could finish, Yis stood up. It felt like talking to someone from a different world, despite my reluctance. I had given him my contact information and even discussed meeting our parents. His disdainful look upon hearing about my father's absence bothered me. In the end, we agreed to meet again with our parents. When I explained this to Mom, she smiled. "Riley, maybe you were just nervous because you haven't dated before," she said reassuringly. Maybe, but the way he spoke was weird. "Well, his parents will be there, right? Just say no if it doesn't feel right." "I'll be there too," I replied, feeling guilty. "Thanks, Mom. Sorry for dragging you into this," I apologized. Mom laughed heartily. "It's okay. No need for you to feel bad. Besides, I'm curious about Sunrise Bank, so let's see how it goes." So, Yis and I arranged a family meeting. At that time, I had no idea Yis had planned the meeting for such a shocking purpose. On the day of the meeting, we arrived at the place Yis had chosen. It was a fancy restaurant. "It's a big place, isn't it?" I remarked as we entered. "Yes, it is," Mom agreed. Inside, our table was ready, but Yis hadn't arrived yet. We entered and waited, and shortly after the scheduled time, Yis and his family arrived. "Sorry we're late. The traffic was terrible." "Nice to meet you. Thank you for today." Yosef's family unapologetically took their seats. Irritated but not wanting to start a fight, I initiated the family meeting. After some time, Yosef's mom, Morgan, with a sly smile, spoke up. "So, where is your father? Is he coming later? Huh?" she inquired, looking around. I looked at Yes, but he just smirked dismissively and said nothing. I had already told him my dad was deceased. Morgan acted as if she didn't know, despite having agreed to meet our families. Mom quickly responded, "In my stead, my husband passed away from illness when Tiffany was young. So today, I'm here as her mother," Mom responded with a calm smile. In contrast, Morgan raised her voice in an exaggerated manner. "Oh my, Tiffany is from a single-parent family." Her words took me aback. Even after explaining that my father had passed away from illness, her tone clearly carried malice. "Being from a single-parent family, life must be quite hard, huh? But she graduated from a public university. That's commendable, right? Really, but still, being from a single-parent family, wouldn't dating her be complicated?" Ye's family's conversation left Mom and me utterly dumbfounded. Despite being present, they spoke so disrespectfully, mocking us as if being from a single-parent family was something bad. Such words weren't suitable for a first meeting. Angered, I retorted in a low voice, "Excuse me, but after Dad passed away, Mom raised me with great care. I owe my current life to her. And isn't it rude to speak about someone like that when you've just met, Tiffany?" However, Morgan burst out laughing at my words. "Rude, isn't it? More absurd for the daughter of a single parent to think about marrying into a high-class family. I'm not really into strong-willed women. This is pointless. There's no getting through to them." Thinking this, I just stared at them in disbelief. I had high hopes since she works at a major company. "Well, you'll eventually carry on Sunrise Bank, so maybe she's not quite at your level." As they hurled more insults, I felt no need to listen anymore. Trembling with anger, Mom glared at them. "Did you invite us here today just to look down on us? I've heard from Tiffany about the other day. You're enjoying berating us for being a single-parent family, aren't you?" Her words took me aback. Even after explaining that my father had passed away from illness, her tone clearly carried malice. "Being from a single-parent family, life must be quite hard, huh? But she graduated from a public university. That's commendable, right? Really, but still, being from a single-parent family, wouldn't dating her be complicated?" Ye's family's conversation left Mom and me utterly dumbfounded. Despite being present, they spoke so disrespectfully, mocking us as if being from a single-parent family was something bad. Such words weren't suitable for a first meeting. Angered, I retorted in a low voice, "Excuse me, but after Dad passed away, Mom raised me with great care. I owe my current life to her. And isn't it rude to speak about someone like that when you just met, Tiffany?" However, Morgan burst out laughing at my words. "Rude, isn't it? More absurd for the daughter of a single parent to think about marrying into a high-class family. I'm not really into strong-willed women. This is pointless. There's no getting through to them." Thinking this, I just stared at them in disbelief. I had high hopes since she works at a major company. "Well, you'll eventually carry on Sunrise Bank, so maybe she's not quite at your level." As they hurled more insults, I felt no need to listen anymore. Trembling with anger, Mom glared at them. "Did you invite us here today just to look down on us? I've heard from Tiffany about the other day. You're enjoying berating us for being a single-parent family, aren't you?" It was the first time I heard her speak so sternly. "Please stop with the accusations. It was just a little teasing, right? No one feels good being mocked, and all your remarks are condescending. We have no intention of listening to this any further." Ye's family looked displeased at Mom's clear statement. Presumptuous for commoners, huh? Indeed, that may be the case. But this has made up my mind. Ye's family looked briefly surprised at Mom's words, then burst into laughter. They seemed to be thinking, "What can you possibly do?" Mom sighed and began to speak. "Actually, we have funds deposited with your bank, but we don't wish to entrust them to people like you." "Oh, really? But we don't know your name, so it can't be much, right? It's probably insignificant." "That's right. Even if you try to trouble us with your fun, it won't really affect us. Low-class poor people are not needed." I realized that even Mom's last attempt at reconciliation was in vain. But they continued to speak disdainfully, unaware. I sighed and made the final confirmation. We're closing our account. Okay, go ahead. Yosef's family responded with mocking tones and clearly disdainful expressions as they looked at us. I thought to myself, let's make those who judge others by their background suffer a bit. I smiled at the thought. Is that so? Then we will proceed as such. And please consider this meeting never happened, Yosef's family declared. Of course, I replied calmly, knowing we had no intention of marrying into a family with such prejudices. Well then, we will take our leave now, Mom, and I stood up. Oh, don't worry about today's bill. It's too expensive for you, they remarked. Is that so? Well then, with that, our family meeting ended. Later, I made a phone call. Weeks later, my mobile phone was flooded with calls from Yes. Of course, I had anticipated this and had no intention of answering. It was their own responsibility. I immediately blocked the number. A few days later, I received a call from Grandpa Kyle. Summoned by Kyle, Mom and I headed to Sunrise Bank in the meeting room. Ye's family, looking pale, was present. As soon as they saw us, Morgan stood up and rushed over to bow deeply. I am extremely sorry for what happened, she said. I didn't reply to Morgan's words, just smiled and began to speak. What exactly are you apologizing for? At my words, Morgan bit her lip hard, trembling with anger. That's understandable. There are too many things for which they should apologize. That's probably why she's feeling so frustrated. This whole situation started because I said we would close our account. That day, our account wasn't particularly large. Closing it wouldn't have caused much damage. But Kyle's case was different. Kyle managed the inheritance left by my dad at Sunrise Bank for our benefit. Kyle also had his own account there. If all accounts, including Kyle's and my dad's inheritance, were closed, it would total about $7,000 million. In other words, their disrespect decided the closure. And importantly, Kyle is the former CEO of the bank. Dad was supposed to take over the bank but passed away young, so the position went to Scott. I didn't know that Tiffany was related to the former CEO, Scott. Looking anxious, Yosef pleaded as if making an excuse. But that's no excuse. Even if they didn't know, their prejudice against our family is their own fault. You mean, if we were relatives, you would have treated us differently? Dad interjected. Hey, don't talk to Dad like that. It's your fault for not telling us from the start that your grandpa was the former CEO. I don't have any obligation to tell a stranger like you that. Besides, you were the one who started it and made fun of us, remember? I countered, causing Yosef to narrow his eyes in frustration. You insulted me knowing I was from a single-parent family. When I said I would transfer the bank due to insecurity, you told us to go ahead. We just did as we were told. But it's just that it may be just that for you. But have you ever thought about the feelings of someone whose family has been insulted? Silence fell. Morgan was trembling, looking hopeless, and Scott was hanging his head. But Yosef still seemed unconvinced, his face full of dissatisfaction. Getting all high and mighty just because people talk to you. Yosef remains unrepentant. At that moment, the door to the conference room opened and Kyle appeared. Seeing Kyle, Yosef's tone grew defiant, and Morgan turned even paler. Frozen in place, only Yosef glared at me. Even after giving you a chance to reflect, you're still only thinking about yourselves, Kyle said, his tone stern. It's not my fault. It's her. Watch your words. If you continue, you'll end up even more miserable. Yosef, silenced by Kyle's words, glared at me again. Then, as if resigned, he burst out, "No way. Who would think a single parent's relative was the former CEO? You knew I was the future CEO and came to the family meeting just to mock us." Yosef, be quiet. Kyle glared sternly, causing Yosef to breathe heavily. Future CEO, huh? Kyle then turned his gaze to Scott, who shrunk even more under Kyle's stare. I understand wanting to leave the bank to your son, but now that I know his mindset, it's impossible for him to continue as CEO. That's ridiculous, Scott started to retort, but sat down again under Kyle's gaze. You still don't understand that your attitude is the problem. Till I'm retired, the board will decide. If you have something to say it to them. Remember, we recorded the previous conversation, and this one. Don't forget that the voice recorder will serve as evidence. I took out a voice recorder in front of the three and pressed play. The recorder started playing back our conversation from the other day. How dare you prepare something like that? It's unfair, Yosef exclaimed. It was just a precaution, but remember, you forced me into this situation. I countered. Yosef had nothing to say in return, and their faces turned pale. Thank you, we'll handle it from here, they said. So Mom and I left. Ultimately, Kyle didn't transfer the funds, at least not officially. Scott was removed from his CEO position, and Yosef was demoted. Seemingly unable to handle the blow to his pride, Yosef resigned voluntarily. Kyle's influence in the financial industry meant Yosef would struggle to find work in the same field again. Whether Scott knew this or not, he seemed determined to work until retirement, but Kyle said it would be tough for him both mentally and physically. Morgan, who used to wield power as the CEO's wife, apparently started part-time work to maintain her lifestyle. But her character likely made it hard for her to keep a job. I'm really sorry, I said. It's okay. You didn't know, right? Mom replied. I only shared what happened with a friend who introduced me to Yosef. She just heard about him through someone else and wasn't at fault. Mom was initially concerned about being a single parent, but I'm happy now and can live thanks to the support I've received. When I told her that, she smiled and said thank you. After everything was taken care of, Kyle told us to come over to his house again sometime. I'm really grateful for Kyle's help in resolving the situation. He was tough, but I'm happy now, so it's okay. I have some good news for you, Mom said one day. Really? It's not about dating again, is it? I teased. It's a friend of my boyfriend this time. He's definitely a good guy. I'm not interested in dating right now, but I'm satisfied with my current life. I want to keep cherishing those who support me. And maybe someday I'll meet someone I really click with. At my mother's funeral, my mother-in-law wore a grin as she declared, "This house will be inherited by my son." Contemplating which room to take, she remarked, "I wonder if I should choose this one." Politely, I corrected her, stating, "Actually, I'm the one inheriting this house." Unfazed, she retorted, "I know, but isn't it true that a wife's belongings belong to her husband? So, in essence, this house belongs to my son, right?" I sighed, questioning the validity of her claim. Cheerfully, she added, "From now on, let's get along." Hesitating, I asked, "What do you mean by get along?" She declared, "Turning this room into my room." I inquired, "Does that mean we'll be living together?" Confidently, she replied, "Exactly." With such a splendid house, it'd be a waste to have empty rooms when two people can live here, don't you think? Despite my recent loss, my mother-in-law seemed blissfully unaware of my grief. Why would she bring this up now? Can't she see the sadness on my face? It's no time for jokes. This house holds precious memories, built by my respected father and cherished by my late mother. I don't want my unreasonable mother-in-law to live here, and my husband, who doesn't stop it, is equally at fault. To prevent my precious home from being tainted, I decided to take the initiative before moving out. I am a 42-year-old office worker, having missed the timing for marriage and still being single after turning 40. I had given up on the idea of getting married. However, through an acquaintance's introduction, I met Michael, who is 4 years younger than me, and we were able to get married. My husband is a kind person who prioritizes my opinions. Where should we go for our honeymoon? You mentioned that Europe would be nice, right? I asked. But didn't you say you preferred the Maldives? Let's go to the Maldives, my husband replied. My mom wants to live with us. My dad's health isn't great, and it seems my mom is finding it challenging to manage alone, he explained. I understand that your mom is going through a tough time, but didn't we agree not to live together before we got married? I questioned. You're right. I'll talk to my mom about it. My husband always listens to my whims, and I often feel guilty about it. Meeting a good person is a joy, but there's one regret. My father passed away 3 years before I got married, so I couldn't show him my wedding and reassure him. My father was a strict executive at a small and medium enterprise, and I deeply respected him. Despite the modest size of the company, his income was decent, and our family home was sizable enough to hold a funeral. As I began working as an office employee, I gained a deeper understanding of the challenges of work, which only increased my admiration for my father. And then 2 years after our marriage, my mother also passed away. Even my mom, my husband, asked, "Are you okay? Shouldn't you take a break in the back room?" Funerals are generally less commonly held at home, but my mother's funeral was conducted at home. During my mother's funeral, he always looked out for me. Truly, I was fortunate to have met such a good husband. That's when my mother-in-law, Nancy, arrived. "My deepest condolences. I sincerely sympathize with you," I replied. "Thank you." I hadn't lived together with my mother-in-law, and our interactions had been limited, maintaining a reasonable distance. However, it was during my mother's funeral that I glimpsed her true nature. Following the funeral, my mother-in-law approached me. While it was not uncommon for her to seek me out, her expression carried an oddly gleeful tone. "We greatly appreciate your assistance during this funeral. Thanks to you, we were able to smoothly complete the ceremony," she expressed appreciatively. Then, abruptly, she added, "The funeral is over now. Isn't it enough with the formalities?" I was taken aback, thinking she was initially trying to be considerate of my grief, but it soon became evident that wasn't the case. Commenting on the splendid house my parents had, I replied, "Wait a moment." Undeterred, she boldly walked into the depths of the house. I protested, "Oh, Mom, this is inconvenient. Some areas are messy." Dismissing my concerns, she declared, "Don't fuss over details. More importantly, this house will be inherited by my son. I wonder if I should take this room." Hesitating, I tried to clarify, "Mom, I'm the one inheriting this house." Smirking, she responded, "I know your parents didn't have any other children, right? And isn't a wife's belongings her husband's? So, in essence, this house belongs to my son, doesn't it?" I sighed, questioning the validity of her claim. Cheerfully, she added, "From now on, let's get along." My hesitation prompted her to confidently declare, "I mean turning this room into my room." Concerned, I asked, "Does that mean we'll be living together?" Without hesitation, she replied, "Exactly. I've decided with such a splendid house, it'd be a waste to have empty rooms when 2 people can live here. Finally, I won't have to take care of my husband all by myself." Unfortunately, my mother had recently passed away, and yet my mother-in-law was making such statements. I became increasingly angered, wondering why she would joke around at a time like this. Just as my conversation with my mother-in-law seemed to catch my husband's attention, he intervened. "Mom, what are you saying? This isn't the right time for such discussions," he scolded. Undeterred, my mother-in-law retorted, "Why make such a fuss?" Firmly, my husband insisted, "Just leave." He escorted her out of the house, apologizing, "Sorry, my mom can be unreasonable." Grateful for my dependable husband, I replied, "It's fine. Thanks to you for handling it." Yet, in the days that followed, I would come to realize that my husband's perspective on scolding my mother-in-law was subtly different from my own. 10 days after my mother's funeral, as things settled down a bit, we decided to discuss the fate of my family home. Unexpectedly, my husband made a proposal. "This apartment is cramped. Shouldn't we move back to my parents' house?" I suggested. Agreeing, he added, "Yeah, you're right. With more belongings and the possibility of having kids, it's better than squeezing into this tiny apartment." Then, hesitantly, he concluded, "Well then, we should start preparing for the move." I had a pressing matter to discuss about the move. "What's the matter?" I inquired. He hesitated before revealing. Considering the spacious house and all the empty rooms, I thought maybe my parents could move in with us. Stunned, I questioned, "Are you suggesting we live together?" Recently, I've noticed a change in my husband. Despite thinking he prioritized my opinions, I now wonder if he's merely a yes man or even a pushover. His compliance with my mother-in-law's requests and his suggestion of living together make me question his true stance. Despite my repeated objections to cohabitation, he persists, seemingly prioritizing her over me. Haven't I said it repeatedly? We won't live together, I remind him. He responds, but Mom keeps insisting on it. I counter, during the funeral, you scolded her, didn't you? You stood up for me and opposed cohabitation. He admits, yes, I was upset about her barging into the house. But that doesn't mean I'm entirely against living together. I just thought such an important decision shouldn't be made casually in that setting. It was decisive. Despite nodding in agreement with my stance, he seems more inclined towards my mother-in-law. Moreover, he avoids making definitive decisions, maintaining a certain distance, perhaps unconsciously believing he remains neutral. People like him can be tricky, convincing themselves of their neutrality and decision-making abilities. It's frustrating. I oppose living with someone who barged into my parents' house on the day of the funeral and suggested living in a particular room. I won't change my stance. Please convey this to your mom, I insist. He responds, why? You seem really bothered by it. Fine, I'll let her know. While I had mentally prepared for the possibility of living with my in-laws when we got married, witnessing my mother-in-law's behavior during my mother's funeral changed my perspective. Living together in the cherished home my father built is now unthinkable, especially considering my husband's lack of assertiveness. When he conveyed my opposition to cohabitation, my mother-in-law directly protested by calling me. Why are you opposing cohabitation when there's such a spacious house? You're Michael's wife now, and his father and I are your parents, right? Why such strong opposition to living together with us? I reiterated my decline for cohabitation, explaining my husband's mobility issues and the challenges I face alone. She accused me of abandoning them, prompting me to remind her of the reasons my husband had shared. Despite feeling sorry for my father-in-law's health, I can't ignore the possibility of everything related to him being pushed onto me if we were to live together. If we consider cohabitation a significant improvement in my husband and mother-in-law's mindset is a non-negotiable requirement. A few days after my mother-in-law labeled me heartless, my husband surprised me by rearranging the living room, moving furniture around to create space. Intrigued, I asked, "What are you doing? Is this for storing moving boxes?" He responded, "No. I'm planning to make space for 2 beds here." The mention of 2 beds filled me with dread, and cautiously, I asked, "Are your parents coming to stay?" To my dismay, he replied, "No, they're moving in today, even before the actual move." The realization hit me despite my objections. My husband and mother-in-law were forcing cohabitation upon me. Why is this happening? I questioned, feeling a growing sense of frustration. He explained their lease is up, so we decided they'd move here without renewing it. It'll be cramped for 4 people, but we're moving soon, right? Just bear with it for a little while. Distressed, I reiterated, that's not what I meant. Why is cohabitation even on the table? I've said it before. I don't want to live with someone who barged into my parents' house on the day of the funeral and suggested living in this room. I'll make sure to talk to Mom. He responded, "We'll be living together from now on, so please get along." Annoyed, I questioned, "Why do you prioritize everything your mom says?" He clarified, "It's not about prioritizing her. I listened to both of your opinions and made a judgment." However, my husband, often a yes man when it came to my mother-in-law, seemed to have fallen for her cohabitation strategy. Unwittingly swayed by her, he believed he was making independent judgments. I used to see him as kind, but when paired with my mother-in-law, he became a handful, forcing me into cohabitation with my in-laws. As we welcomed my in-laws into our cramped apartment, my mother-in-law began complaining about the living conditions. Apologizing for the sudden addition of 2 elderly people, I assured them we would endure until the move. However, my father-in-law, Tony, seemed polite, and it appeared he wouldn't be problematic. but subtle signs indicated he was following my mother-in-law's lead, becoming another yes man. Days later, my mother-in-law requested an errand to buy a medicated patch. Frustrated, I wondered why she made decisions without involving me in the conversation. Minor as it was, it raised concerns about potential future impositions. Living together seemed unsustainable. With my in-laws preparing for their move to my parents' home, I decided to take preemptive action. As my mother-in-law expressed excitement about moving to the spacious house, I initiated behind-the-scenes preparations, determined to protect my parents' home. After about 10 uneventful days, I revealed my decision to renounce my inheritance. Handing over the official court approval, I explained, "That house holds immense sentimental value. I couldn't bear the thought of you living there, so I decided to let go of the house, preserving it as a beautiful memory in my heart." My mother-in-law scolded, "What madness possessed you? Even if you were letting it go, you could have sold it for money. Why abandon the house?" I calmly explained, "Even if I sold it, you'd just rely on that money. Next, I thought it'd be clearer if I simply had nothing." She retorted, "We moved out of our previous place for this move, you know. What are you doing? How will you make it up to us?" Firmly, I stood my ground. I've consistently opposed cohabitation, yet without proper discussion, you forced it upon me. So I took a firm stance. Both my husband and mother-in-law seemed stunned upon learning about my renunciation of inheritance. Their faces drained of color, and they were left speechless, their strength sapped. My father-in-law looked bewildered as he observed the two of them. However, I wasn't about to let up. "Michael," I continued, "I've been thinking about getting a divorce. What do you think?" My husband stammered, "Divorce?" My mother-in-law chimed in, "Michael, you should divorce this ridiculous wife immediately." I had expected her immediate demand for divorce, wanting to confirm whether my husband could make an independent decision at this critical moment. "Mom," my husband mumbled. His response was still pending, but my resolve to proceed with the divorce had solidified. "Fine, divorce is the only option," my mother-in-law snapped. My father-in-law interjected, "Michael, it can't be helped. Your mom insists." Sighing, my husband said, "Well, you seem to want a divorce too, and maybe that's for the best." Even in significant decisions, my husband and father-in-law remained yes men to my mother-in-law, and now my husband's words made it sound as if he changed his opinion for my sake. "Very well," I declared, "let's proceed with the divorce. I'll be moving out with minimal belongings." I spent the night at a budget hotel. Urgent matters awaited the next day, so I took half a day off work and headed back to the courthouse. A few days later, my mother-in-law called me, demanding answers. What's going on? It seems that house is becoming yours." Why the sudden outburst? Did you find out through the estate division process? Yes, that house belongs to me. You forged documents and deceived us. I calmly refuted. Why would I forge documents meant for court submission? Those are genuine. Then why is the house becoming yours when you were supposed to renounce the inheritance? I explained. Well, right after that, I promptly withdrew the application. Renouncing an inheritance is difficult once accepted. However, it takes about a month for the renunciation application to be accepted, during which time it can be withdrawn at any point. The documents I showed my in-laws were not acceptance-related. They were from the application stage. I intentionally made them believe I had relinquished the house and confronted them with the prospect of divorce to gauge their reactions and decide my next steps. I didn't expect my mother-in-law's mindset to change, but I hoped my husband would reconsider and express that he didn't want a divorce. If he said he didn't want a divorce, I planned to rethink it and later explain about the house. However, so the house really becomes yours then, since it was acquired before the divorce. It's subject to property division, right? In such cases, you two are supposed to split the money from selling it, don't you? My mother-in-law seemed determined to extract whatever she could, recognizing the house wouldn't be hers. However, I had foreseen this. If that house were jointly acquired, it would indeed be considered shared property. However, it's a unique asset acquired through inheritance, exempt from property division. Unfortunately, specific assets like this aren't eligible for division. She persisted. What about the money that would come to Michael through property division? I calmly responded. We've only been married for a few years, so there's hardly anything substantial. Maybe just the car, although there's still an outstanding loan on it. Accusing me of selfishness, she called me heartless and declared, I'm protecting that house because it holds precious memories of my parents. I don't want people like you living there. If you have any further complaints, please go through a lawyer. After the call with my mother-in-law, the divorce proceedings progressed smoothly. Presumably, she urged my husband to expedite the divorce. Regardless, the divorce was finalized, and I was free from the burden of dealing with my in-laws. I felt a sense of relief, as if I had successfully shielded my father's home from harm. After I moved out, my former in-laws spent some time in the apartment where my ex-husband and I used to live. Despite one less person, the small space likely felt cramped. My former mother-in-law explored new housing options, but their age posed challenges in passing rental application screenings. Consequently, my ex-husband opted to rent a smaller single-family home for them. Although it's smaller, being a house, the rent is likely higher than the apartment. He also assumed the responsibility of supporting his parents. My ex-husband faces a challenging life ahead. Initially excited about moving into the large house my father left behind, my former mother-in-law now settles for a considerably smaller home, likely leaving her disappointed. As for me, I've embarked on a new chapter in the house my parents left me. It radiates warmth, as if my parents are still present. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time, I am Emily, a 33-year-old office worker who tragically lost my parents in a car accident at the tender age of 8. Initially, my 5-year-old brother, Ethan, and I were taken in by our paternal grandparents. Despite their desperate efforts to raise us, the task proved challenging in their retirement years. 3 years later, I found a new home with my aunt and uncle, who became my adopted parents. The transition was nerve-wracking as I moved away from my grandparents, but my aunt and uncle welcomed me with open arms, treating me as their own. Let's slowly become a real family for us. You are already our daughter, my uncle reassured me, bringing a sense of relief. Although my new home was a 30-minute train ride away from my grandparents, I cherished the hope of visiting my brother when I got older. Being adopted into a family brought unique challenges, but I came to understand that blood relation and a parent-child relationship are not synonymous. Over time and shared experiences, I realized that a mother isn't only someone who gives birth. It's the bonds formed through love and patience. As I navigated through life with my aunt and uncle, I learned that family goes beyond blood ties. While I only shared the truth with close friends, they were surprised to discover that we weren't blood related. A friend's mom once commended my well-adjusted upbringing, but I attributed it to the remarkable love and patience of my adoptive parents. Initially, I struggled to fully open up and was even rebellious at times. Yet, my aunt and uncle faced and accepted me with unwavering patience. Now, as an adult, I find myself wanting to give back to them. With gratitude in my heart, I joined my uncle's company, worked diligently, and have now become a supervisor, a small way of expressing my appreciation to the two people I truly consider as my parents. I maintained regular contact with my brother once we both acquired cell phones. Our communication primarily consisted of texts and calls, and I would occasionally visit him. However, after high school, our meetings became less frequent, and he would only respond to my sporadic texts. It's a common occurrence for siblings of different genders to drift apart as they age. Despite the growing distance, my brother thrived in our grandparents' house, remaining kind. Although he may have felt moments of loneliness without parents, he never caused significant worry and matured over time. Eventually, he graduated from college and secured a position in a well-known company. a source of immense pride for our grandparents and me. This year, on his 30th birthday, my brother reached out unexpectedly, expressing his desire for me to meet the woman he was marrying. While I felt a bit upstaged, the news of his impending marriage brought genuine joy. Regretfully, our grandparents, who passed away in the last 2 to 3 years, couldn't be present to celebrate. A few days later, my brother brought his fiancée, Samantha, to our house, where my aunt, uncle, and I reside. "Let me introduce you. This is Samantha, my fiancée," he proudly announced. Reflecting on our journey from losing our parents at a young age to being eventually separated, he expressed warmth in his eyes. Witnessing my brother's happy face made me feel almost maternal towards him. As he introduced Samantha, I greeted her warmly. "I'm his sister, Emily. Thank you for coming today." I couldn't help but express my happiness at seeing my little brother all grown up. My aunt and uncle also welcomed Samantha with smiles and warm greetings. "Congratulations on your engagement. I'm glad to meet Samantha too," I added. Samantha responded briskly with a smile, expressing her gratitude for the warm reception. "No, it's only natural for us to come and greet you. I also wanted to have a chat with my future sister-in-law," she said, initiating a friendly conversation. I had envisioned her as a sheltered young lady, being the daughter of a company president. However, she appeared quite capable. Ethan, being a gentle and easygoing type, perhaps complimented her well. That day, as we all introduced ourselves and chatted over cake, my aunt and uncle included, she looked directly at me with determined eyes. Amidst various questions about my single status, plans for marriage, and life as the adopted child of the family, she seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me, her future sister-in-law. As we exchanged contact information before parting, she later reached out, suggesting we meet at a cafe. It felt like the beginning of gaining a sister, a somewhat ticklish feeling. However, my cheerful mood took an abrupt turn as we sat down for coffee. Ethan's fiancée expressed a desire to talk with me alone. Anticipating a discussion about my brother, I reassured her that I was open to any complaints or hard-to-say things. To my surprise, that wasn't her concern. With a sigh, she gazed intently at me and said, "I have a favor to ask before we get married." Her choice of words made me apprehensive. "So, you're the adopted child of that couple and single, right?" I confirmed, taken aback by her sudden question. Then she dropped a bombshell. "Ethan is practically a stranger to you now, right? Please don't involve yourself with us after we get married. We won't invite you to the wedding since you're a stranger." Stunned, I blurted out my surprise. Just wait a minute. What is she talking about? I might be a stranger legally to my brother, but we are real siblings. I have no intention of meddling in your married life, but I do want to attend and celebrate your wedding. I've heard that no family is free of problems between daughters-in-law, mothers-in-law, or sisters-in-law. Is she trying to preemptively ward off any potential issues with me, her future sister-in-law? But I have no intention of interfering in my brother's marital life. I gently reassured her that there was no need to be so wary, but she shook her head at my words and spoke again. "Please don't misunderstand. I'm saying you're a stranger to us, family yet considered strangers." I couldn't comprehend what she was saying and tilted my head in confusion. "Ethan and you have been strangers for a long time, right? You're still unmarried and living with those elderly folks, not even on your own. Being an adopted child and single, it would be troubling if you were to rely on us in the future," she declared firmly, delivering such cold words for the sister of her future spouse. Taken aback, I responded, but she continued without concern. "It's out of the question for you to rely on us after they pass away. They're still healthy, so please don't say such things. Besides, I have my own job and income. For now, if you were unemployed, I wouldn't have even come to greet you," she interrupted me, glaring. "Anyway, we won't invite you to the wedding, and you don't need to invite us to any of your family events either. Just because you're single, don't expect any future support or care from us." I felt a wave of confusion and questioned what she thought of me. Sure, I'm single now, but I have a job and savings. Considering a family member of her future spouse in such a way made me feel dizzy. I tried to express my understanding, but not even being notified about family events seemed too extreme. I understand how you feel, but not even notifying about family events seems too much. I don't think Ethan would agree. Just because we've seen less of each other as adults doesn't mean our family bond is gone, I responded firmly. Well, minimal involvement is unavoidable, I guess, but please gradually distance yourself, she said so nonchalantly, making me feel sad. I'm asking for the sake of our happy marriage. If you refuse, it might complicate our marriage. Remember, it was Ethan who wanted to marry. Think about his happiness, okay? She implied that if I didn't accept this, she might not marry Ethan. It sounded more like a unilateral ultimatum than a request. The proud smile Ethan had just days ago came to mind. While the conditions seemed unreasonable, I didn't want to interfere with my brother's marriage. Faced with her irrational demands, I was left speechless. That night, when I told my aunt and uncle about the day's events, they both found it hard to believe. Understandably so, as she seemed so pleasant when we talked the other day. I was equally shocked. Initially, I thought she didn't want a sister-in-law meddling, but it went beyond that. She insisted that we were strangers and wouldn't hear otherwise. Concerned, my uncle asked, "What will you do?" I replied, "I don't want to ruin Ethan's wedding. I'm not happy about it, but I'll skip it. Once things settle, I'll meet with Ethan alone to celebrate." I see, but if Emily is treated like that, we have no desire to attend either. My aunt nodded in agreement. Seems like the problem is on that young lady's side, isn't it? My uncle said, puzzled, and my uncle nodded with a slight smile. Then came the wedding day with a clear and blue sky. I shouldn't have been there to witness my dear brother's special day up close, but it couldn't be helped. My cell phone rang, displaying Samantha's name. I had saved her number affectionately, thinking she'd become my sister-in-law, but now she was a stranger. Feeling no obligation to answer the call, I switched to silent mode, but the calls persisted, like a persistent demon. My aunt and uncle chuckled, guessing who was calling. I wondered what kind of face Samantha, who had bluntly told me I was a stranger, was making. The calls finally stopped, but my phone's call history was filled with Samantha's name. I chuckled at the thought of her being a stalker. There were voicemails, but I didn't feel like listening to them. That afternoon, as my aunt, uncle, and I enjoyed our favorite donuts, the intercom rang insistently. When I went to the door, Samantha, Ethan's fiancée, burst in furiously. "Why aren't you answering your phone? Do you know how many times I called? Aren't you supposed to be getting married today?" she exclaimed. I calmly responded, "What do you want at a stranger's house? It's your fault the wedding's ruined." Samantha was taken aback. "Excuse me?" I smiled back unfazed. "You didn't let your uncle and aunt attend because you weren't invited." "I haven't done anything. I just didn't go to the wedding, as you told me." "That's right, you told me not to come to the wedding because I'm a stranger. Why should I answer a stranger's call?" I continued. Samantha questioned, "So, why are you here?" I replied, "Well, because your uncle here is the president of the Electrical Industry Association," and someone started saying he wasn't there. Suddenly, Ethan appeared with Samantha. "Ethan's sorry. I thought she ran off without listening to me, but she really came here." "Sorry, Emily. I didn't know anything." "What happened?" he asked. Samantha explained. "I heard from Samantha that you wouldn't attend. She said you had to meet your boyfriend's parents on this day, and it was hard for you to tell me. I thought that was understandable." I couldn't help but chuckle at the convincing lie for a reason not to attend my brother's wedding. I was impressed. Then today, when attendees noticed our uncle's absence, they started asking why the chief guest wasn't there. Someone close to our uncle mentioned that his daughter was denied attendance, and she's the groom's real sister. Samantha's parents were shocked, saying they knew nothing about it. Relatives and other guests got involved, causing a big commotion. So the wedding turned into chaos, whether it was expected or not. Biting her lip, Samantha glared at me again. "Because of you, I was criticized terribly, called inhumane. If you had answered the phone and come to the wedding, Things might have been different, you heartless person. Who's heartless here, I wonder? Uncle, who had been observing quietly, stood up and spoke. I decided not to attend on my own. Emily, in fact, wanted me to be there for her brother. I'm a businessman and currently the president of the Electrical Industry Association. I have connections with Ethan's major manufacturing company and your father's component factory, but you've just ruined a good relationship. Your thoughtless actions are going to make your position and even your father's company situation very difficult. By the way, Emily is now a supervisor in our company. She's indispensable, studying technology and management every day. And she's been the secretary of the Electrical Industry Association for 2 years now, building quite a network in the industry. Samantha, who had underestimated me as a poor, troublesome single woman, opened her eyes wide, uttering a ridiculous sound. Indeed, Emily and Ethan lost their real parents when they were young. It's sadder than we can imagine. Uncle's voice was calm yet dignified, but Emily has bravely and positively carved out her life. Judging her foolishly just because she's adopted and single is far more foolish of you, Samantha. Samantha was left speechless, having no words to counter my uncle's argument. Yet again, she lashed out at me, this liar. If your uncle is such an important and wealthy person, you should have told me. Then I would have let you attend the wedding. Enough already. I sharply dismissed her childish behavior. I tried to talk about my work, but you were the one who didn't listen. Remember, we all introduced ourselves on the day we first met. You only remembered that I was single and adopted. People like you, who judge others only by their titles or appearances, end up in situations like this. I'm not living here because I can't afford to live alone. I want to be with my parents, but we are a family now. As a stranger, you should leave. Wait, you need to help me out here. I find myself unfairly portrayed as the villain in this sisterly dispute. Do something? I'm not your sister. I'm a stranger. I corrected her with a smile. I'm the adorable fiancée of your brother, so I'm like a sister, right? Despite my attempts to clarify, the conversation seemed pointless. You should take responsibility for your own words. I'll take back what I said before if you help me smooth things over, she insisted. There's nothing a stranger like me can do. Wait, goodbye then, I stated firmly. She protested, no, come on, let's go, as Ethan reluctantly led his protesting fiancé away. Afterward, Ethan and Samantha's engagement was called off, and she had to deal with the wedding cancellation fees. Despite her complaints, her parents accepted that it was her fault. Despite being the daughter of a president, her father's company was just a small factory, and maintaining relationships with Ethan's major company and my uncle's Electrical Industry Association was crucial for survival. Due to her actions, her father had to apologize profusely. Samantha, having caused such a mess, was reprimanded and not allowed to return home. She tried to stay with friends, but after the wedding fiasco, they distanced themselves and no one offered help. Ethan came to apologize, reflecting on his choices. She only liked me because I worked for a major company and had no parents to trouble her. The way she treated you like an obstacle, I hate that I couldn't see through her. Ethan slumped, and we all tried to comfort him. It's good that we weren't married yet, and she was pretty. It's not your fault for being deceived by someone who hid her true self. I reassured him. You're too kind. It's a shame about her, but someday you'll find someone who truly cares for you, I said, hopeful. Here, Ethan, your favorite donuts. Let's have some coffee, I suggested, trying to lighten the mood. This incident somehow brought me closer to Ethan, with whom I had lost touch as adults. I realized I had also been neglecting to contact my brother. The initial news of his engagement was the reason for our reunion, so in a way, I'm grateful to her. Watching Ethan and my aunt and uncle talk like a real family, I pondered these thoughts. Friends, lovers, family, maybe we take those closest to us for granted and forget to show them care. I resolved to cherish my loved ones more.